It's been several weeks now since Ubisoft released Watch Dogs, and as you all know, it didn't take long at all for PC users to figure out that, hey, these graphics settings look absolutely nothing like E3 of 2012, and as a matter of fact are more or less on par with the console versions, which, and I'll say this once and for all, these consoles that are supposedly next gen are nothing more than mid-range PCs from 2011, but that aside, these look relatively similar. Now, Boogie had a really good term for it that he used in a video he made recently, and he called it console parity. You could also call it platform parity. Basically saying that the PC versions are gimped in order to more or less look like the consoles. Now, there's been speculation of why this has been done, and that's kind of what I want to delve into more in this video. The fact that there has been a gimping, that's been done in videos over and over and over again by people. I want to go more into today why. Okay, there was a patch released recently, and you could put patch in quotation marks, something like 1.7 gigabytes worth, which interestingly enough, it came out just a few days after the worst came up with his config settings. It's not a mod because the files were already in the folders. It's not a mod, it's just a reconfiguration of the settings. The patch came out a few days after that, when people had been waiting nearly a month to get a patch, and all of a sudden it comes out right after. Okay, interestingly enough, there's that fact. But then you go into why. Why did Ubisoft gimp not only the PC version of Watch Dogs, but the console versions as well? Is it because Sony paid them off? Is it because Microsoft paid them off? Well, that doesn't seem to make too much sense. But why did they do this? Now, I've got a couple of theories regarding this. Okay, let's get started. First of all, number one, these companies are all about making money. The devs are about making money. The console owners are about making money. The publishers are about making money. They have to spend so much money in their budgets for advertising, for graphics. Remember the title Tomb Raider that came out last year? Do you remember how it sold 3.4 million copies almost right away, and Square Enix was calling it a disappointment? Now, it finally gained profitability later, actually earlier this year, after worldwide sales bumped that up. Industry analyst Billy Pigeon said in 2013 that a game that has a $100 million budget would have to have ratings above 8.5 and sell between 5 and 10 million copies in order to be profitable. And that makes you think again as to why journalists were receiving Nexus 7 tablets at Watchdog events, but don't think about that too much, otherwise you'll be labeled a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist. With a budget of Tomb Raider approaching 100 million, you can see why it didn't gain profitability until just now. Now let's go back to Watch Dogs, which had about $68 million in budget prior to its delay. So let's say Ubisoft had gone all in, making Watch Dogs look as brilliant as possible, and not only the PC version, but also the Xbox One and the PS4. It probably wouldn't have taken long before the tens of millions of dollars started to roll on, cutting into their profits right there. But they might have figured, hey, it's the lowest common denominator. The graphics aren't going to look the same as they did in E3 2012. We recognize that, but other companies have done it before. Their E3 demos don't look anything like the game that's eventually released. Aliens, Colonial Marines, I'm looking in your direction. Now, what I think is an undeniable fact, and people are slowly starting to realize, that these consoles, which were just released, are seriously lacking horsepower and the torque to be able to handle graphics that were seen in 2012. I mean, let's be realistic here, folks. Looking at those specs, that was an outdated PC 2 years ago, a year before its release. So yeah, things are going to look really shiny for a demo at E3, run on a PC, by the way. But as far as optimizing those settings for consoles and PC, that's going to cost a lot of money. Plus the fact that's going to make a lot of Xbox and PlayStation users really question their purchase when they look at the comparison between the two and figure, oh my god, it just wasn't worth it to Ubisoft. Now, that's another theory. Okay, so let's go a little bit into what's happening to people post-patch. There have been reports all over the place that after putting this patch in, people that have had the worst settings configured in their game are now noticing that there's terribly chugging, stuttering going on. I mean, this is Grand Theft Auto 4 levels we're talking about here. And it seems to be kind of coincidental that the Watch Dogs dev team came out with a statement saying that the reason the E3 settings weren't put into the initial release were because it would have sacrificed performance, when nobody had noticed any performance dips at all prior to this patch being put in. So let's think about this. They wait a month for a patch, nothing happens. These E3 settings get discovered. A statement comes out from the dev team saying that they didn't put in those settings because it would have wrecked performance when nobody was noticing that happening. And then a few days after that, a patch is released in which there's major stuttering issues now, which weren't apparent before. Gotcha. So why is that? Well, I gotta be honest with you. Reading that Watch Dogs dev team update talking about how they didn't want to use the E3 settings because it was unstable, that statement, that's basically politics 101 reading through that thing. So this is almost getting into territory where it's a cover-up now, because you can't have the bad press of intentionally making things really shitty for everybody so that the PC doesn't shine head and shoulders above all. And they weren't going to put the R&D time and money into trying to make the console versions look like that demo. That's just too much money. And hey, what's one of those big rules out there? The cover-up is usually worse than the crime itself. So rather than admitting, yeah, we crippled it, it's just, no, see, it ran really unstable. See, here's this patch, by the way. Oh, see, it runs really unstable. See, we told you. Come on, you gotta be a fool to fall for this kind of stuff. Now, could this be Sony paying off Ubisoft? Might be. I mean, I've seen stranger things in my life. But I'll tell you something that's absolutely definite. Things are really starting to level off. 3D didn't go as far as I think a lot of analysts thought it would. There's a lot of time and resources going into things like the Oculus Rift. And we're just to the point now where graphically, PC gaming is just not going to explode on a yearly basis like had previously happened. I mean, I had mentioned Skyrim. You look at some of the mods that are put out now, it's photorealistic quality. Where exactly can you go from there? So I think everybody better get prepared that shortcuts are going to be taken. A lot of times the PC version is going to be gypped and gimped, but that's a sacrifice they're making because as PC owners, you just don't mean as much in terms of revenue that the console owners do. But it is a genuine grievance because we put a lot of dollars and cents into these systems to try to get the very best out of things we buy. We want returns on our investments. And when you put out a fully priced title that's gimped to shit, and then somebody finds files which makes the game actually look like it should, as previously advertised, then a patch comes out that wrecks performance, yeah, people are legitimately pissed off. Now let me mention just briefly why I think this is a particularly bad thing for PC users, and I haven't noticed anybody else making this argument. There is relatively no incentive to upgrade your graphics card right now, unless you're a heavy benchmarker. It's not like the old days. Remember in the pre-Fermi days, right around the GTX 260, then you had to get a 280, 285, 295. Then we got into the 400s, 500s, blah, 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 into today. You were upgrading probably every year if you wanted to keep on ultra settings with these games. That's not the case anymore. And I'll tell you something, until 1440p, 120 Hz and the IPS monitor comes out, a lot of people are just sticking with 1080p because it's not relatively hard to just downsample from 1440p anyways. Now, if you're doing a triple monitor setup, that's a whole nother story, but I'm specifically talking about people with a single monitor here. So this is not a good thing for PC users, and especially for NVIDIA, AMD, and their partners. I mean, I've got my GTX 670s and SLI still going, and I max everything, which is downsampled from 1440p. Now, we're not going into this graphics is not everything debate. That's a topic for a different day. And I agree with you. Graphics is definitely not everything. Check out those Battlefield or Call of Duty games, which look the same, pretty darn good every year, but the games are absolute putrescent shit. The fact is, this is not going to be anything that stops. In fact, the creative director of Ubisoft Montreal, Alex Hutchinson, recently told Major Nelson that Far Cry 4 is going to look exactly the same on ultra settings on PC, PS4, and Xbox One. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Everybody that keeps pre-ordering these titles, and it's not just Ubisoft doing this. As I said, Skyrim didn't have great graphics when it came out. GTA 4 was and is a biblical mess. And who could forget the Diablo 3 fiasco? So none of this stuff is looking like it's going to change. But what really sucks is that when people vote with their wallets and say, hey, I don't want to buy this version on PC, then they look at the numbers and say, oh gee, I guess a lot of people must just be pirating the game. No, it's because we see you're not putting your best effort forth, and we're sure as shit not going to reward you for that. Look, the main point is, if you haven't picked up Watch Dogs yet, at least wait until it goes on sale, because it's not stable right now. There's major controversy surrounding it, and it's still $60, with probably a ton of DLC coming. So wait till it's at least half off for the Game of the Year version, which it boggles my mind how it could get Game of the Year. And by the way, don't pre-order Far Cry 4, or you are the textbook definition of insane. Talk later.